Hola y bienvenidos a este video donde vamos a hablar sobre el curso A-Level Spanish con AQA. Hello and welcome to this video lesson where we're going to take a look at what you can expect if you're taking A-Level Spanish with AQA.
En este video vamos a mirar, in this video we're going to take a look at ¿por qué estudiar A-Level Spanish? Why study A-Level Spanish? El contenido del curso de español, the Spanish course content, y los exámenes, and the assessment objectives that you'll need to meet and the 3 exams that you'll take at the end of the 2 years. Primero, ¿por qué estudiar A-Level Spanish? Why study A-Level Spanish? The A-Level Spanish course will enable you to develop both your linguistic skills in Spanish as well as your cultural understanding of all of the Spanish-speaking world. So you'll look at Spain as well as Latin America. You'll get to study technological and social change in the Hispanic world, and you'll also look at the multicultural nature of Hispanic society. Now you'll also have the opportunity to delve into some of the artistic culture of the Spanish-speaking world and the legacy of past civilizations like the Aztecs, the Mayans, and the Incas. Finally, you'll get to explore the influence of the past on present-day Hispanic communities around the world, whether that's the influence of the legacy of past civilizations like the Mayans, or whether it's about Columbus's journey to the New World and the colonization of Latin America. And you'll get to explore that through the study of Spanish-speaking countries and their societies and communities. You'll also get to study a Spanish text as well as a film, putting your Spanish to use in group discussions about the characters, the stories, the messages that the film and the book contain. And finally, you'll have the opportunity to carry out what's called an IRP, or an independent research project, and you can do that on any topic you like. This will give you the opportunity to dive deeper into any area of personal interest, and that could be sports, politics, music, feminism, or just about anything else. And we'll see some examples of this in a few minutes. Ahora vamos a mirar el contenido del curso. We're now going to take a quick look at the course content. Now, the content of the A-Level Spanish course falls into 2 main themes. Generally, the first theme covers year 1 of the course, and the second theme is taught in the 2nd year. So the first theme is social issues and trends, and the second one is political and artistic culture. Within these, there are 2 sub-themes for each one. So in the first year, you'll start off with aspects of Hispanic society, and then multiculturalism in Hispanic society. In year 2, the sub-themes are artistic culture in the Hispanic world and aspects of political life in the Hispanic world. Now within these, there are also 3 units that you'll cover for each of those sub-themes. In the very first half term, you'll look at the unit called Modern and Traditional Values. And in this unit, you'll look at the family and how people view and the values that people have around the family unit in the Spanish-speaking world and how that's changed over time. You'll talk about attitudes towards divorce and marriage and how they're changing with the younger generation. And finally, you'll look at the influence of the Catholic Church, which has had a huge influence on how people see the world and see themselves in the Spanish-speaking world. In the second half term, we'll look at cyberspace, and that's where we talk about technology, the internet, the risks and dangers of the internet, piracy and things like that. Everything technological, social media, the advantages and disadvantages of that, and how this has had an impact, how the technological revolution has had an impact on Hispanic society. And then in half term 3, you'll look at equal rights, which is where we talk about gender equality and LGBT+ issues, gay marriage, feminism, and things like that. In half term 4, we'll start off with immigration, and within that we'll talk about the positive and negative aspects of immigration in the Spanish-speaking world, and also the problems and issues around undocumented or illegal immigrants in the Spanish-speaking world. In the next half term, we'll look at racism, and within that we'll look at racist attitudes, xenophobic attitudes, the measures that have been taken against racism to counter racism, and also legislation, legal things that have been changed towards creating a more equal and anti-racist society. And then finally, the last unit that you'll cover in the first year is integration or multiculturalism. And within that, we'll look at how cultures, different cultures can live together and how they do cohabit in Hispanic society in lots of Spanish-speaking countries. We'll look at education and religions. In the first half term back in the 2nd year, we'll start off with modern-day idols. In this unit, we'll look at TV and film stars, musicians and singers, and fashion stars like top models in the Hispanic world. Spanish regional identity, and within this we'll look at traditions, customs, food, traditional food from the Spanish-speaking world, and the different regional languages other than Castilian Spanish that are spoken alongside the Spanish that we're learning. And then the final unit in the sub-theme is cultural heritage. Within this, we'll look at art, we'll look at architecture, we'll look at touristic sites and pre-Hispanic civilization, so looking at the Incas, the Mayans and the Aztecs and the influence they have to this day on Latin American culture. And we'll look at the diverse musical heritage of the Spanish-speaking world. For the final sub-theme, we'll start off with a unit called Today's Youth, Tomorrow's Citizens. And within that, we'll look at young people's attitudes in the Hispanic world towards politics. We'll look at two extremes, young people that are activists and are constantly striving and getting involved in politics to make the world a better place, and young people that don't really get involved. We'll look at unemployment amongst young people, and we'll also delve into this idea of an ideal society and what that might look like. In the next unit, monarchies and dictatorships, we have a look at Franco's dictatorship in a bit more detail than is usually looked at in GCSE, and we'll look at the evolution of the monarchy in Spain, and finally we'll look at some Latin American dictators. Finally, you'll look at popular movements, and within that we'll look at the effectiveness of strikes and protests, we'll look at the power of workers' unions, and we'll also look at some examples from recent history in the Spanish-speaking world of social protests. As I mentioned before, you'll also get a chance to study a text and to study a film in detail, and this will help you to improve your listening and reading skills in Spanish, to develop your literary and cinematic analysis skills, which you can then take beyond Spanish when you're doing film analysis or text analysis in English or in other languages, and you can learn specialist vocabulary for discussing films and books that a native Spanish speaker would use, which is great if you're planning to go on to university and maybe pick up things like film study modules in Spanish. Now, there are lots of different texts and films that your teacher can choose from. Some popular texts are La Casa de Bernarda Alba, Crónica de una muerte anunciada, y Como agua para chocolate. And some popular films are Ocho apellidos vascos y El laberinto del fauno. Now, another exciting thing that I touched on earlier is the IRP, the Independent Research Project. Now, to do this, you will be able to identify a subject or a key question that's of personal interest to you and that needs to relate to a Spanish-speaking country or countries. But other than that, it's pretty much open to do any topic that you'd like to do. You'll get to select relevant information in Spanish from a range of sources, so they could be books, could even be personal experience, but most likely you'll go to the internet and do your research on the internet. And the aim of the Independent Research Project is to develop your research skills, such as analysing and summarising findings, as well as being able to present and discuss your findings in Spanish. So not only will this take your Spanish to the next level, make you a more confident speaker, the research and analytical skills will be really good if you're planning to go on to university, regardless of what course you're planning to take, because most university courses have some element of research. Now, because it's such a wide open opportunity, the Independent Research Project, to give you a bit of an idea, I'll just show you some example ones. You could talk about la diversidad de la lengua castellana, the diversity of the Castilian Spanish language, los avances para la mujer en la sociedad post-franquista, the advances of women in post-Franco society, el islamismo en España, Islam in Spain, la deforestación en Amazonas, deforestation of the Amazon, el desarrollo y sostenibilidad en América Latina, development and sustainability in Latin America, activismo social en la España contemporánea, social activism in modern day Spain. And these are just some examples. If you're already thinking of something that interests you, that's fantastic, because this is really the bit of the course that you get to make entirely your own. But if you can't think of something now, over those 2 years, I'm sure there'll be one of those units, one of those sub-themes or those topics that will really pique your interest, and that will probably inspire you for your independent research project. Y ahora los exámenes. Now let's talk about exams. What will I be assessed on if I take A-Level Spanish? Now, first I'll talk about the 4 assessment objectives that you need to meet, and then we'll have a look at the exam and the different papers on their own. So the first assessment objective is based on your ability to understand and respond to spoken language through speaking and through writing. So that means if you hear something, if you do a listening activity, you're able to respond to that in speech, or if your teacher asks you a question in Spanish, you'll be able to respond to that in Spanish, and also to respond to a listening or being spoken to in writing, for example, answering questions about an audio track or a YouTube video. The second assessment objective is your ability to understand and respond to written language through speech and through your own writing. So that means if you read a text, such as the text that you'll study, you'll be able to respond to questions about that text in spoken Spanish and also in written form. The third assessment objective is your ability to manipulate the language accurately in both spoken and written forms, and your range of vocabulary and grammar knowledge. Now there is quite a lot of new grammar that you'll learn at A-level, and there's lots of the same grammar from GCSE that we'll look at just in more detail. We're just building on those foundations. And actually at the end of the A-level course, your level of Spanish will be so much further beyond the GCSE level that you'll really be so close to fluency and so much more able to express yourself in exactly the words that you'd like to use compared to when you finish your GCSEs. And finally, the fourth assessment objective isn't based on your spoken or written Spanish at all. It's not about the language, it's about your understanding. So this is about your knowledge and understanding of different aspects of Spanish-speaking cultures, societies, countries and communities, and your ability to discuss them critically and analytically. So this is where all that content is really important, because 20% of your overall grade will be based on how you've engaged with that content, how you've picked up the knowledge about Spain and about Latin America, about the family unit, about the Catholic Church, about technology, about multiculturalism, immigration, all those really interesting units that we looked at a few minutes ago. And you might be asking yourself, that's great, we know the assessment objectives, but how many exams will I actually sit and how long are they going to be? Now the first paper, which is worth 50% of your overall grade, is the listening, reading and writing paper. And this one is 2 hours and 30 minutes long, and it consists of 4 elements. First you listen and you respond to questions, then you read and you respond to questions, then you need to translate a Spanish passage into English that's typically about 100 words long, and then finally you translate an English passage into Spanish, and again that's usually about 100 words long. So this one is really quite a comprehensive exam because it tests pretty much all of your skills except for speaking. The second paper is purely a writing one, and this is worth 20% of your overall grade. And this one's 2 hours, so it's not as long as the first one, but it is just focused on writing. And this one is basically an essay writing exam where you answer an essay question for both of the works that you've studied. So there'll be a question on the book and a question on the film. And you'll need to write approximately 300 words in Spanish for each of those questions. And finally, the paper 3 exam is the speaking one, which is worth 30%. And in that one, it's only 21 to 23 minutes long, with 5 minutes preparation time, and it consists of 2 parts. The first part is a discussion based on a stimulus card, so just like at GCSE you have photo cards, the A-level stimulus card will probably have images on it, but also a text, so a bit of information, maybe a bit of statistics and things like that, and 3 questions that you'll need to answer. You'll also have to ask your teacher or examiner 2 questions about the topic, so you're practicing not just answering questions but also posing questions. And then the second part is where you'll present the findings of your independent research project for up to 2 minutes before you discuss them with your teacher or examiner. And that brings us to the end of this video. Muchísimas gracias por ver este video. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it's been useful. I hope if you're still considering what options to take, I hope it has inspired you to take A-level Spanish. And if you're already taking A-level Spanish, then hopefully this gives you a good idea without taking up too much of your time of what you're going to be doing over the next couple of years and what to expect from the exams at the end. Otra vez, muchísimas gracias y espero que te vaya muy bien con el español.